So they were tired. They were less experienced. But in many ways, the Patriots were overmatched. And the way in which you can win when you're overmatched is to the body. Right? Get to the late rounds, and then you get the knockout. There's a lot of the boxing analogy is great. It's one of the things I love about boxing. I hate boxing, the sport, because there's no commissioner, because great athletes don't do it. But the idea of boxing where a guy who's not as good can win. The Patriots aren't as good as the Falcons. They're not. And they're down 28-3, and they had the most incredible comeback we've ever seen in the Super Bowl. Because they had a young offensive coordinator, an inexperienced team in terms of being in the Super Bowl, and they got rope-a-doped a little. What an unbelievable night in football. Unbelievable. And it's interesting. There's some epic foreshadowing for this. Were the playoffs good? No. I mean, outside of the Chiefs-Steelers game was close, not great. The Cowboys-Packers game was great. Although, remember, Packers were up big. Cowboys came storming back. But those were the two. Outside of that, playoffs were terrible. AFC teams, not good. Plus, Derek Carr out for the playoffs. Brock Osweiler did play in the playoffs. Neither of these things good. And just like last year's NCAA tournament, which in the national semifinals, Oklahoma got beat by 44 points. Worst loss ever. Anybody care? No. All we're talking about today is, man, Game 7 NBA Finals. March Madness win on a last-second shot. Game 7 World Series. And the most unbelievable comeback in the history of the Super Bowl. What happens last is overwhelmingly more important than everything else. And that was unbelievable. So, yes, I thought it was over. I thought the only thing we'd have to decide after they're up 28-3 was what the final score was. But I would contend as a younger generation guy, as a guy who, like so many of us who are younger generation, thinks we got all the answers. You know what? Old football guy would have said, what are you doing? Kyle, come here. What are you doing? Right? 22-yard line? 1st and 10? Run the ball. Run the ball. So this is an ode to the old guys, because the old guys have made those mistakes before. The old guys have learned from their errors. And Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan will learn from it. Will they get back here? Anyone who says they know they'll be back because the Carolina Panthers were nearly undefeated last year, got to the Super Bowl, and everyone would have expected them to contend, and they did nothing this year. Nothing. But Matt Ryan can't take a sack, has to drag the clock out till 1 or 2 seconds remaining in the play clock. Kyle Shanahan has to manage the game better. And I will tell you this, Vince Lombardi, the old guy, the old coach, fatigue makes cowards of us all. The Patriots did not win the first half with the exception of one stat, time of possession. And a Falcons defense that was completely embarrassing the Patriots in the first half looked below average. Couldn't put pressure on them, couldn't cover. They had opportunities. Vic Beasley nearly had a pick. They had plenty of opportunities. But, man. Klug, you all right, dude? How you hanging in? Just so you know, if you're just joining us, this is Adam Klug, my producer and good friend for 7 years. And he is also a long-suffering Atlanta sports fan.
Emphasis on long-suffering.
Long-suffering Atlanta sports fan. Did you think it was over at half?
The way that Atlanta sports fans are...
You know, I'm not taking the way...
They expect the worst to happen. And I thought this team was different. I expected them to win against Seattle. I expected them to win against Green Bay. And I didn't expect them to beat the Patriots, but I thought we had a very good chance. At halftime, I did think it was over. And that's knowing the history of Atlanta sports collapses. Yeah. I thought it was over.
Diesel, do you think it was over?
I absolutely thought it was over at halftime.